Good afternoon and welcome to the New York Charter Schools Association statewide webinar. I hope everyone's having a nice day. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. I'm joined today by Anna Hall, CEO, Northeast Charter Schools Network, Janet Klein, Associate in Education Research at NYSID, Catherine Connell Espinoza, Chief of Staff at the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, Aaron Cochran, Deputy Executive Director of Policy and Operations at New York City DOE, and Corey Callahan, General Counsel and VP of Legal Policy at the New York City Charter School Center. So welcome back to our monthly statewide webinar. We have reached June, which I know will be marked by many celebrations. We are celebrating Pride Month this month. In a few days, we'll be observing Juneteenth. June is also Gun Violence Awareness Month, and we have been heartbroken over the recent rash of horrific mass shootings, beginning with the devastation that occurred in Buffalo on May 14th. Of course, our hearts continue to go out to all the victims and families and their communities. And we are sharing just a little effort here. We hope goes a long way in this. We're sharing a resource. This link is from the New York State Department of Criminal Justice. That we can all use on our social media platforms to raise awareness of the everyday impacts of gun violence. So we're sharing this with you. It's just another small way to hopefully put an end to all of this senseless violence. June will also be the culmination of the academic year, of course, for many schools. Graduation and moving up ceremonies will be taking place. While it has been a challenging year, it's worth it to take the time to think about where we all are now compared to where we were a year ago. And certainly what's been done to reopen your schools. Everybody give yourselves and give each other a round of applause, especially in the ways that you've been there for your students, families, and staff. There may be a long road ahead in trying to figure out what the full impact of the pandemic has been and where we all end up when we're done. But we here at the association certainly acknowledge, appreciate, and applaud all of your hard work to be there for your communities. And we are proud to be there for you. And of course, if there's anything that we can do not hesitate to reach out, call, email, myself, anyone at the association, community engagement managers, our staff who work every day supporting schools. And we want to spotlight your celebrations and your hard work as well. So we have a little plug here. If you want to help amplifying your celebrations and your work, especially hint to elected officials and policymakers and people who need to see the great work your schools are doing, please reach out to the association at comms@nycharters.net or tag us on social media at nycharters, nycharter so that we can share your stories. One more June big deal. June, of course, this year in New York, we have primary elections for some of the elected offices. So June primary elections are right around the corner. On June 28th, we're voting for governor, lieutenant governor, state assembly, and judges. So not the Senate. Again, voting for governor, lieutenant governor, state assembly, and judges. That election day, primary election day is June 28th. You can request an absentee ballot if you will not be able to vote in person or don't want to vote in person. Need to make that request by Monday, June 27th. Early voting is 9 days before the election date. This will be Saturday, June 18th, and it'll run through Sunday, June 26th. Make sure to check your polling locations at times because they may differ, especially if you're used to the date for and time for general elections, they differ for primaries. So again, Saturday, June 18th, early voting kicks off in New York State, governor, lieutenant governor, state assembly, and judges. Election day itself for the primary is June 28th. Polls are open, should be from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please visit the association's website, and I will drop that in the chat for more information about voting. And we needed to make a big plug for that because that is also a big deal for June. And our community engagement managers in each region are available and also willing to attend your graduations, actually looking forward to it, and other end of year events and summer school to register your high school students. High school students can register to vote as early as 16 years old. We also offer webinar help to help them register. Please reach out to the association if you are interested and you want your students and other folks in your school community to participate. Okay. The statewide tour has been going on since April 30th. Thank you all the schools who came out and supported. Thank you for those who amplified us on social media. We are coming into the Syracuse stretch of the statewide tour on June 25th. The Stand Up for Ed Equity statewide tour will continue. We will be in Syracuse. We thank, again, everyone who has come out to our past tour stops to speak out and to fight for equity and education for all students. Join us as we gather in Syracuse at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday, June 25th, if you're around and available. If not, please share the word. And we're going to talk about improving education and fight for education civil rights. This tour stop will be held indoors as a community conversation. We hope to have a good dialogue, and hopefully we can make some good impressions on folks who have questions about charters, quality education, what does it mean, and what our advocacy is about, and trying to improve school quality and fight as well for school choice. Please tell your friends, family, and school community, and encourage them to stand up for education equity too. A flyer for this event has just been dropped in the chat. Registration is open for our 2022 New York Charter Schools Conference. The association is proud to be hosting this year's conference in Buffalo to showcase the vibrancy and resiliency of our New York charter school community and the innovation of our state charter schools. We will be dropping the link to register for the conference in the chat. As always, the association member schools receive complimentary attendance. If you have any questions about the conference, please email us at conference@nycharters.net. Likewise, our general call for conference presenters is now open, and we will be accepting proposals for conference speakers through 5 p.m. on August 12th. If you have a topic that you would like to share, we ask that you complete our conference submission form, of course, in the chat, and selected presenters will be notified in mid to late August so that we can share the full conference agenda in September. If you have any questions about presenting at the conference, please reach out. Please reach out to Michael Good at mgood@nycharters.net. The association is wrapping up its 21-22 school year school support programming with the final board members working group meeting, and that will be held on June 23rd at 4 p.m. During this session, we'll be joined by Kevin Bryant from Edgeability Consultants, a leader in senior leadership, hiring and performance management. And Kevin will talk about the practices that make for an effective working relationship between boards and senior school leadership. A registration link for the June meeting is in the chat. Last week, the legislature wrapped up its work for the regular session. It was Governor Hochul's first legislative session and budget negotiation. The budget was bolstered by billions in federal COVID aid, helping New York keep its commitment to fully funding foundation aid. The additional aid doesn't directly benefit charters, but increased spending by districts will benefit schools in the coming years. Despite the fight for increased funding and parity by the association and other charter advocates, the legislature and Governor Hochul did not provide either in the budget or any end of session initiatives. We, of course, will keep up the fight on that and continue to educate the public about issues this summer and fall, which coincides with campaign season for all 213 legislative seats. We were successful this session in fending off the surreptitious charter kill bill, as I like to call it, pushed by Senator Lieu and introduced in the Assembly by Education Chair Assemblyman Benedetto, as well as the Buffalo Charter Moratorium Bill, the statewide Charter Moratorium Bill, and the bills to prevent expansion or to require school district approval for charters sponsored by district approval for charters. These bills are sponsored by members in the Senate, in the Assembly and the Senate. Big ticket items for the legislature and executive, such as mayoral control or accountability, got 2 years only with strings attached, including an expensive and unfunded mandate, my words, to limit class sizes in New York City by 2027. Gun control measures, and I just want to take a minute and a pause on that one. So the class sizes thing is another initiative that we're watching, taking in, exploring, reviewing a lot of the research about, the despite what some other folks may say, how much exactly class size matters versus quality of the school, the teacher and personnel in the classroom and in the school, as well as any potential impact or fallout in terms of availability for space for charters in New York City. So we will be watching that. Gun control measures and codifying the reproductive rights protection currently granted in Roe rounded out the high-profile actions, as is typical, especially in an election year. The legislature will likely return before the end of the year, so we will be ever vigilant and always advocating for funding and increasing the number of seats available in all areas of the state for students at great charter schools. A free 4-day online training will be offered in summer 2022 as a part of a collaboration of New York State Education Department, New York State Unified Court System, and the New York's Community Dispute Resolution Centers. This training will be for school leaders interested in implementing restorative justice practices on their campuses. Following completion of the training, schools can apply for a free implementation coach. Schools interested in registering for this training should email Daniel Koss. We'll drop his email address in the chat with a letter signed by your board that includes the information, the letter signed by your board. And that includes the information we are sharing in the chat. So in the chat, you'll see all that information. You need just a letter, in addition to what's in the memo, a letter signed by your board. You do not need approval from the superintendent of the school district. Okay, that's it. That's what we have for updates here. It's good to be back. I took up all this time just because I missed talking to you all so much. Now I'll turn it over to Janet and Catherine and Corey and Aaron for any updates they would like to share.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I really love being here. First, I just want to say congratulations to the charter schools whose charters were renewed and allowed to be revised this morning by the Board of Regents. I'm sure it's a relief for everyone. And then I'd like to move on to data reporting. As I had mentioned previously, the program facts reports for ELs need to be done, or we're going to have a problem with charter schools having no current ELs, as reported on data.nysa.gov. And for Board of Regents authorized schools and New York City DOE authorized schools, we monitor compliance with ed law, specifically the requirement that the enrollment of subgroups be comparable to those of your district of location. We monitor that using the SIRS data that's supported by the program facts for ELs. Eastern Suffolk BOCES for New York City charter schools had set a deadline of 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Just past 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'm going to pull a data set, and then I'm going to start communicating with schools who have not as yet completed that report. It's really critical that that gets taken care of. As well as student daily attendance. I checked earlier today, and New York City charter schools were at about 50% compliance with that report. Now, keep in mind, that's the report that determines the EBT or PEBT benefits that families will receive. It also is very critical. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Hi, Catherine.
Thanks, Yumika. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Connell-Espinosa, Chief of Staff at the SUNY Charter Schools Institute. It is nice to be joining you this afternoon, and I only have 2 updates for folks. Reminder for SUNY authorized charter schools that, excuse me, that the budgets are due by June 30th, and those will be submitted in Epicenter. And I'm just going to put a link in the chat because we also have updated guidance available on our website for the new templates that does reflect the official per pupil aid rates for the 22-23 school year. Additionally, for those schools up for renewal in the fall, the renewal application is also now available on our website, and the application will be due August 15th. And the academic team will be providing additional guidance and details about completing the application in the coming weeks. Those are the updates I have, and I will grab the link and put that in the chat for the renewal application as well. Thanks, Yumika.
All right, thank you. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Corey.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Just a couple of quick updates from our end. So just a reminder for all charter schools that your session times are due by end of day June 17th. That's this Friday. Any New York City charter school that does not apply for new session times will default to last year's session time. And just a reminder that session times are not guaranteed until they are approved. To co-sign a lot of what Janet said, a strong reminder to submit all of your state reporting to Eastern Suffolk BOCES, along with making sure that your ATS data is cleaned up for the year, because that will also be sent up to the state. In addition to any intermediate deadlines, we are recommending that schools submit all of their data to Eastern Suffolk BOCES by July 5th. That will give you plenty of time to make sure it's flowing to the state. You can review it, make sure there are no corrections or edits that need to be made. And if there are, you will have enough time to resubmit. I will, as soon as I'm done speaking, pop the Eastern Suffolk BOCES completion reports in the chat. Those are just high-level guesses at each school's completion. So we do recommend that you are carefully reviewing level 0, carefully reviewing L2 RPT to make sure that the data truly is complete, because this is just a guess based on your student populations. Additionally, please make sure that you are list noticing or pre-register all students by June 30th, if not earlier, if there's an earlier deadline for your specific need, or earlier using the pre-rollover guidance that we have shared in the C Weekly. This is absolutely critical for a large number of reasons, including for transportation and for special education related services. And then just a final reminder for folks to please be reviewing the C Weekly for all deadlines related to summer and fall transportation. There's a very long list, too much for me to recap on this afternoon call. But if you are not reviewing the C Weekly regularly or checking with your teams, we strongly recommend doing it, because a lot of the deadlines right now are incredibly critical. And those are our updates.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your updates. So
sorry, Mika, can I go?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, you know what, Corey? You know what? Blame it on my head.
Okay. Just a quick couple of things. Just want to reinforce this Friday, we're having the last DOE/DOH call of the year for New York City charters. So again, there's not too much going on, but folks should definitely join if you're interested. We will go on a break for the summer, but we'll come back. I know, I'm surprised I haven't seen it in the chat. We are constantly getting questions about, what, if any, will be health guidelines in place for next year, for school year. Still have not seen anything out of, local or state. But obviously that is something we'll be very closely watching. And then I would also just say to New York City charters, as Erin said, there's lots of important things in the C Weekly, but just if you are offering the summer boost program, make sure if you want to continue the COVID testing with the DOE that you let the charter school office know. Unless, Erin, you're about to say something else.
I was going to clarify, it's for any school offering academic summer programming, not just summer boost.
No, that's fair. A majority of you who are offering summer programming are probably doing boost, but yes, anyone offering summer programming, you are eligible to offer to continue the DOH testing program that DOE will be using for the summer. So just make sure you get that in.
Yeah, sorry, we've shared, you can submit a ticket for how to submit that, and we will be sharing very soon what that looks like.
And yes, Stacy, this is still the free testing, just, similar to what started at the beginning of the 21-22 school year. This will be the free testing, and it will be comparable to whatever percentages are being tested in the district will be tested at the charter for students. That's all. Thanks, Yumika.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this year in the legislature, the open meetings law has been a roller coaster ride following the pandemic and the changes when you can, when you cannot conduct the open meetings. We know that for a lot of schools that has been a lifesaver in terms of continuing to conduct business, to having an effective and rigorous board operations. We also know that changes have an impact on how board meetings and other public meetings are conducted. So we wanted to use this as an opportunity to share the key provisions with you of the open meetings law and all of the changes. So you're hearing the good definitive word. And joining us today is Paul O'Neill to give us a short summary of these changes. Paul advises schools, networks, philanthropies, charter authorizers, and other stakeholders on the legal issues impacting education reform. At Barton Gilman LLP, Paul advises New York Charter schools on the full range of education and governance issues they face. He co-leads Barton Gilman's education law practice group and its New York office. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mika. I really got to write something new there. That's kind of wordy. So Paul O'Neill, work with a lot of you folks as an attorney, not serving that function today, just talking, not legal advice. But you know, since the news came out about the changed open meetings law rules, I got a lot of calls from a lot of schools, and I'm hearing a lot of confusion. And I think that it's safe to say they couldn't have done it in a much more confusing way if they tried. So I think it's perfectly legitimate that people are a little confused. I know that the state association has materials on this and have done things on this. I see Corey here, Corey Callahan from New York City Charter Center, and we made a presentation on this not too long ago, and I drew some of it from that, some of it from the association stuff, and I came up with a little bit more on my own. So I pulled together a little PowerPoint slide deck. Bear with me if you've already got this thing down, but it's a little tricky, so let's just run through it. Now, Michael, can we throw up those slides that I sent along? Okay, excellent. So that's me. What is that subtitle thing?
One moment, let me flip my presentation.
Let's all give subtitles a try. All right, so I don't want to belabor this. Everybody, I think, has a general sense that the open meetings law is a transparency law. They call them sunshine laws. There's one in every single state. And they say that you have to, if you're a public entity, in this particular state we call it a public agency, if you're a public agency, you need to conduct your meetings in a way where the public can see it. You don't have to let the public participate. You can choose to have the public participate on some level, but they have to be able to see you make decisions. Transparency is important, especially when we're talking about public funds. And so when you spend money, we should be able to look at you do this. And look at you is an important consideration, because the understanding is that you should be able, and I think a court said that you should be able to assess the demeanor of the people who are making these decisions. So that's not a phone call, right? It's either be there in person, or in New York, it says, well, we can make use of video conferencing. And that used to be a more arcane thing back when Skype was the only thing you could do, but now it's not so hard to do. And we've obviously been using that a lot. The open meetings law applies to all your board meetings. It applies to committee meetings, although a lot of people don't either know that or care. Other kinds of work sessions. Doesn't apply to things that the board does where the board members are not acting in a decision-making capacity. They're not discussing the work of the board. So board retreats, I did one this weekend now. All of them were there, but it wasn't an open meeting. You can, if you have to meet with counsel, if you're concerned about something, you're getting legal advice, that's not an open meeting. That's not a meeting. That's just you meeting with counsel. If you meet each other at a cocktail party, I would say, actually, if you meet each other at the cocktail party and talk about the Yankee game, it's not a meeting. If you meet at the cocktail party by chance and you start substantively discussing the issues in front of the school, I think it's arguably a meeting, and you be careful about that. But one big aspect of the open meetings law that's a challenge is you have to give public notice. And that, I think, is a very relevant consideration for the changes that have recently come down. So let's go to the next one. Every year when the state budget gets passed, magical things happen. Things show up that weren't there a while ago. Things get dropped that were expected to be part of the budget. And one of those things is this year was that they made a change to the open meetings law. So what we saw is that they've created a new route for board participation. And they appear to have left the old route in place. Although I'll be honest, if you read the text of the new route, it doesn't say anything about the old route being in place. So I want to talk about that, and I think that that's the source of a lot of the confusion. The focus of these new rules is how board members can participate in meetings remotely, and how the public gets notice of and access to those meetings. Okay, next one. So before this spring, it was always true. You can meet in person, right? That would be the baseline. You can meet in person. The Charter Schools Act says that if you're meeting, it should be monthly and it should be at the school. What exactly that means in a world where we have different campuses and where the authorizers, and I know there's some authorizers on this call, haven't always cared that much if it was at the school, and especially when we're talking about being remote, it might not be at the school, but that is the baseline. We meet in person. Also, the open meetings law before any changes, before the pandemic, said that board members, however many elect to do so, could participate via video conferencing equipment. The public, if you're going to do that, the public had to be provided with the location of where people were going to do that from. So the idea being, we're supposed to be able to assess your demeanor. We're supposed to be able to see what the decision makers look like as they're making their decisions. So if I decide to do a meeting, I'm on the board of the New York Autism Charter School. If I decide to do that from my summer home, the public should be welcome at my summer home to see me as I do this, right? They don't get to talk, but they get to be there. And so the notice for the meeting has to include the locations from which board members are going to participate. That's the rule pre-spring 2022. Now, over the last pandemic months, the governor has issued an executive order which has modified those rules, which has allowed you to meet by phone, and a couple of other things. It bumped up the need to get the information out on the internet and to transcribe things and whatever. It's not really what I want to get into today because that's not the rule anymore. The executive order has been allowed to lapse, and the pandemic rules are not in place. What is in place is this new set of rules. So let's go to the next. So going back to this notion that you're able to participate remotely under the old rules, if you follow rules about notice, the law says that a public body that uses video conferencing to conduct its meetings shall provide an opportunity for the public to attend, listen, and observe at any site at which a member participates. The public notice should provide the date, the time, location, the meeting, and this includes the address of each location. So we throw in the example, charter school holds monthly meeting at the school. A few board members want to take the meeting from their personal residences. In order for those board members to count as part of quorum and the vote, their personal residence must be in the notice. And if anyone were to request access, you'd have to let them in. All right, next one. So we added a new lane to how people can participate in public meetings. We now say that a public body shall provide an opportunity for the public to attend, listen, and observe meetings in at least one physical location at which a member participates. So we're narrowing it to a certain extent. It also says that a public body may, in its discretion, use video conferencing to conduct its meetings pursuant to the requirements of this article, provided that a minimum number of members are present to fulfill the public body's quorum requirements in the same physical location or location. So let's unpack that a little bit. That's saying that if you want to have a quorum under this new route that we've established, you have to have a quorum in person. It doesn't say at the school. It says, because this obviously applies at more than just schools, it applies to all public agencies. It says that at a location or locations, right? So maybe you have some people on this campus and some people on that campus. There might be a variety of ways that you do it. But the important thing is that to use this new 103A rule, you need to have a quorum in person. And then once you do, people who aren't there in person can participate in voting, but obviously not for quorum. So next one. Keeping on with this new route, members can participate by video conference, won't count for quorum, but they have to, in order to justify not being there, demonstrate or at least assert that there are extraordinary circumstances that are keeping them from doing so. And that's defined in a resolution that you have to pass in advance in order to make this thing go forward. Now, it's a pretty wishy-washy, loose description of what would qualify as an extraordinary circumstance. It could be disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or any other significant or unexpected factor or event that precludes the member's physical attendance. And I would say that is broad enough that if you just want to say, yeah, it's not working for me tonight, that's probably good enough. But if it were to repeat, I would just suggest to you, and this isn't written in the rule, if the same person is having that problem every single month, I don't know. I'm not sure that would pass muster, but I guess if they had a variety of problems or extraordinary circumstances that are ongoing, you could make the argument that that's okay. The in-person participation requirements shall not apply during a state disaster, emergency. We could basically go back to where we were before or some other really problematic health situation where if that's the case, then we sort of pulling back from this and we'll do whatever the authorities tell us at that time. All right, let's keep going. So these new provisions went into effect on June 9th. They go for a year, or they go for 2 years actually, and then I guess we'll see. In order to make use of them, you have to actually adopt a resolution that says you want to explicitly make use of them. You have to pass a resolution. I've written a couple for schools over the last month or so, establishing how you're going to do it. Members that are remote must be identified in the meeting minutes, and then they have to be seen and heard and identified and all the rest of that stuff. The meeting notice has to include the video conferencing is going to be available and where the public can view and or participate and where the documents and records will be posted. You would expect that if anybody's going to be remote, the public should be able to receive a link that allows them to look at it that way. If, interestingly, if you are all in the room or in the rooms where you are in person, you don't need to create the ability for the public to access it online. You don't have to create that online option if everybody's in person. All right, next. You need to make a recording of the meeting and post it within an appropriate time frame. Members of the public also have to be able to participate via video conference and participate as if they were in person. Again, you do not have to allow people to participate in your board meetings any more than you used to have to do that, but you have to enable them to do it if you're going to make that access. Video technology has to be done in a way that allows access in keeping with disability law. Next one. So that looked like that was it, right? So we have two things. We've got do it in person or follow these new rules that they created. And if you opt to go for the new rules, you have to put them into place. But then there's an entity called the New York State Committee on Open Government. And the committee, as lawyers know who do this work, frequently you can call them and you ask them what they think about things relating to the Open Meetings Law or to the Freedom of Information Act, because Freedom of Information Law, because they oversee it and they can give advisory opinions, and those opinions have clout, right? So if you say, can I do this? And they say, yes, you can do this, they'll send you an email and you can rely on that. Like they're the authority. And they issued a Q&A after the rule came out. And I'll give you the link to that. And they said that they think that the old rules are still in place. So next slide. They said, and this is I will give, yeah, go to that one. I'll give Corey credit. This is Corey's slide here. That they think that there's nothing, although there's nothing written in the new rule that says the old rules still apply, which is to say that everybody can be remote. You just have to tell everybody where you are in the notice, right? They said, well, I don't think anything changed. I don't think any right that you had before went away. And so reading the highlighted words here, in other words, we believe that if a public body was permitted to do it before the pandemic, this law doesn't change that. And go to the next slide. Building on this in another one of their Q&As, they say that before the onset of the pandemic, public bodies routinely held proper open meetings by video conference from multiple physical locations identified in the meeting notice that were open to the public, connected virtually together by video conference, and this remains proper. So I think some of the confusion that I've been getting from schools has been around this. Like, yes, you can do the in-person thing. Yes, you can do the new thing, but you can still do the old thing. And it really becomes, I think, a question of which do you like more? Do you like the ability to just do that indefinitely? You don't have to, for the old way, come up with an extraordinary circumstance for why you're remote. You're just remote, but you have to trade it because you have to give them where you're doing it from if you're doing this lawfully. But the other way allows you some anonymity, or at least your location, some anonymity. And it doesn't let you get a quorum with everybody being remote. So you have kind of two different ways to get to this notion that people can be remote. Right. Next one. Where does that leave us? Well, we have those three options, and we know that if the virus comes back or other health or safety concerns get in the way, that we are going to potentially throw aside our set of rules that we just got, just like we did during the pandemic, but that's not our problem right now. Right now, here's what we have. So go to the next slide. So this is really what you have. This is it. The one slide's all you need. All members, you can go to number one, which is all members meet in person, no video conferencing, and no video link for the public. Or there are multiple meeting locations open to the public, and all locations are connected via video conferencing. No new limits on remote participation, must include the remote location. So this is the old rule. And then we have the new one, which is adopt a resolution to utilize the new video conferencing flexibilities and make sure that the schools comply with all of its requirements. And there are a bunch of things in schools can choose to use this flexibility. There are limits on remote participation, which is to say it doesn't count for quorum, and you have to articulate exceptional circumstances, but you may not need to share the location of remote members. All right, so I'm not sure that I have an important slide that follows this. I have some that we could talk about if you want additional. So before I get to that, any questions? I think there are things in the chat.
Yeah, there are a number of questions in the chat. Do you want to just go for those?
If I have time, can somebody just read them to me?
Okay, we'll start with the first one. The people who are remote need to share their locations anymore.
They do if they want to go through the old route. So if you don't want to say, oh, these are exceptional circumstances, and that's why I'm not here, and you don't want to have, if you don't have a quorum for people in person, then you do. You do need to share.
All right, second question. When it says make a recording of the meeting, is that just if there is a video component?
Well, that's certainly an easy way to do it. The rules under the pandemic were that you needed to record it and then transcribe it. I don't believe and I'm going to go back to Corey on this, unfortunately. Corey, I don't think you have to transcribe it anymore, do you?
Only upon request.
Yeah, only upon request. So
It's only upon request now.
Yeah. So if you have the video recording, then you use that. All right. Next one.
All right. If the board meets in person but receives presentations from schools remotely, do other members of the public have to be allowed in to Zoom in too?
If you're doing, my understanding is if you're opting for remote, you have created the remote option for anybody who wants to participate in your meeting. If you don't create a remote option because you don't have anybody who's not in the room or rooms, then you don't have to do it.
Okay. In the case where multiple locations are joined via video conference and open to the public, why isn't a quorum required at one of the locations under the new rules?
Read that again.
Yeah, in the case where multiple locations are joined via video conference and open to the public, why isn't a quorum required at one of the locations under the new rules? I think the answer to that question is it is required.
Well, I think what they're saying is, should you have a quorum at each one of those locations? And what they're allowed to do is sort of pool it together and say, if you have location, maybe the people are at campus A and some people are at campus B, people are welcome at both. At least that's my read of it. I've never heard it interpreted before. I guess we'll find out.
I actually think this isn't about the new rule. So as I heard the question, it's about if your multiple locations are joined via video conference and open to the public, that's almost pre-COVID rules, right? That's just when schools would get together, and it's not about the new rule. The new rule is if you want to use this real flexibility to not have to worry about voter members disclosing their location.
Okay.
So-
well, arguably, the only thing that you would have to do in terms of being there in person under the old rule is to have somebody at the school.
Right, that's it.
It does say
Yeah.
that you're supposed to hold meetings monthly at the school.
Right.
But who that person is or how they would access that is not specified.
It's no.
Right. Before we move on, Laura, if you're on, do you want to unmute? Did we answer your question? Did your question get answered?
Yes, I think Corey explained it, so that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's the old rules. One thing I will add in, so one of the parts of the new rule is that if we're under a state of emergency, whether it's signed by the governor or local, the in-person requirements still don't apply. And this afternoon, the governor did re-sign the state of emergency given the COVID rates. So schools have now until July 14th, where you would still be able, you do not have to follow these new protocols. Like you could still suspend and have remote meetings. So that just came out this afternoon. So folks that have a June meeting or early July, you'll get to take another month.
Reprieve. Okay.
Thank you.
Next question for Paul. The Committee on Open Government issued numerous opinions in the early 2000s stating that board retreats were covered by open meetings law. Has that changed?
I am not, if what you're saying is that they're saying that board retreats that don't talk about the subject matter of the board and don't offer, I mean, I would have to see those rulings. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see why you would be constrained in that way. I mean, I ran a retreat last weekend where people were showing baby pictures to each other.
Yeah. Okay. Corey, does anybody else want to add anything? Questions, clarification? Okay.
The Committee on Open Government, when they gave their Q&A, basically said as much. If there's no official business being conducted, no votes being taken, those do not fall into the open meetings law when they held their webinar on this. So I would say that it's about the content of that retreat, but if the retreat is not about voting business, the OML would not apply.
Right, back to Paul's good example. If you see each other, don't talk about business.
Baby pictures, bring baby
right, that's right, baby
really
pictures,
cute.
baby pictures. If you need to talk about business, you gotta make sure there's not enough of you to create a quorum. But you didn't hear that from me. Do the meetings need to be ADA compliant, and what does that include if they have to be?
Well, one of the slides mentioned that that you need to be ADA compliant in how you conduct things. It would be a different size conversation here to talk about that, but we're certainly not exempt from that.
Can I just add to that? Because the Committee on Open Government did in their webinar mention that if you are broadcasting over Zoom, the sort of internal closed captioning process for Zoom needs to be turned on. So if you do have remote participation, closed captioning does need to be on. And that does amount to the ADA compliance. But if you're using a different platform that doesn't have a latent closed captioning system, you'll have to provide some type of closed captioning to make that ADA compliant.
And it looks like the last question is, how long do addresses need to remain public? Just a clarification on that.
Oh, I mean, my thinking is that they're not that useful for the public after that meeting is over, right? So I don't know, maybe the Committee on Open Government has addressed this, but I can't imagine that the public gets any benefit after the meeting's over. There's the point where they're supposed to see you doing the meeting.
Right.
So, I mean, it's hard to unring that bell to a certain extent. I mean, if you published in some kind of media that here's somebody's address, but I don't see why you would need to keep it on your website any longer than you need to, but you're gonna have to do it again next month, so.
I agree with that. I've told schools the same thing. If you feel like, the notice needs to be up 72 hours in advance, and then at the time after the meeting, if you take it down, I don't think you're in violation of anything.
Yeah, I'll just add that if the concern is about not having information after the meeting's over, we all understand how the digital world works. Once it's up, it's out there. And it will live for as long as whoever has seen it, captured it, holds on to it. So that should be a consideration before posting it and before deciding what those addresses are. So wait, one more question. So probably schools should redact the address after 2 to 3 days. I guess that's a comment. I'm sorry, I thought that was a question.
Can I just add real quickly that the posting of the address is supposed to be a publicly accessible address. The intention of that posting of the meeting address, if somebody is remote, is that that is also accessible to the public. So to the extent that your meeting notices are putting somebody's personal home residence on them, that wouldn't necessarily be the remote address itself. You would want to have a publicly accessible location if it's not sort of the main venue for the meeting.
Okay. All right. Mike, can you drop again the resources that we have, the link to that in the chat for everyone? And then we will move on to the next one, but I'm sure this will come back again and again. Thank you to Corey and certainly to Paul O'Neill. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you, Corey, for your support in the Q&A. We are going to move out now to our focus topic presentation. We are happy that we have Janet Klein here to introduce a special guest. We're going to close out our monthly update for this year. Maybe we wanted to share this final reflection on what schools are most thankful for this past academic year and let all of us know how they are celebrating the end of the school year. I'm going to turn it over to Janet Klein to introduce our guest school. But we ask attendees, everyone on here, to join us by typing the chat, if you're so inclined, the things that you're most thankful for over this past year. This will be, again, our last update before the summer break. So some happy thoughts in the chat will be a great way to wind this down. But before we do that, certainly, I would introduce again Janet Klein, who's going to introduce our special school guest today. Hi, Janet.
Hi, thank you, Yumika. I am very pleased to introduce the superintendent for the Science Academies of New York Charter Schools, Tolga Hayali. The Science Academies of New York are a collection of 4 schools in Syracuse, Utica, and a new campus launching in the fall of 2022 in Rochester. The schools are focused on graduating students who can think critically and creatively, who are committed to a lifetime of learning and civic involvement, and who are conscious of local, global, and environmental issues. Please join me in welcoming Tolga Hayali.
Thank you. Thanks, Janet. Very appreciated. And thank you, everyone else, for allowing us to join you guys. I want to also introduce one of our leader who is running the Citizenship Academy also in Syracuse and sharing the best practice within the 4 or 5 minutes we were given. So let me introduce you our wonderful leader in the Citizenship Academy, Mr. Frisina, Mr. Dominic Frisina. And Dominic, let's join. Yeah.
Hey, thank you, everybody. I certainly appreciate it. And Dr. Ali, thank you for the introduction. We're tremendously thankful, obviously, for this school year and being able to be back in person, with our learners. Transition, creativity, growth, and grit, those were really the elements that we wanted to come back with the Science Academies of New York and also in our individual schools. Prior to the school year, we worked to address what would be a very fluid year with predictable problems and some that would be unpredictable that we just wouldn't be able to know in advance. But our main goal was to really be true to those key design elements and work on strengthening the bond with community, especially with the Science Academies of New York. One of the pieces that we knew that we wanted to bring back was the community service element and just being connected and just empowering our students to have meaningful relationships with our children, with adults, but most importantly with themselves coming back after such an emotional event. We're all aware of the implication of living through the global pandemic, and it hits students and staff in a variety of different ways that we saw play out through the school year. September somehow had 100 days, and there was a lot of uneasiness about being physically present and being back together. But in October, we were very blessed. We established and reestablished our social emotional learning program through our conjunction with our partnership with the Positivity Project, and really focused on aligning to those mental health standards through New York State. We introduced daily theme lessons in this way, but we also did a needs-based analysis as our school to target our lessons based on what feedback our students were giving, the parents were giving, and our staff were giving So we coordinated that home to school connection. We went back to our home visit based system, getting out and meeting our parents where they are, meeting them in multiple formats, even if it meant being in the front yard. And at the same time with those home visits that we had from different pre-pandemic times, we started to bridge that relationship. In February, we were fortunate enough to see the local mandates ease to be able to bring back our guests and community speakers at the school. And we were able to bring back our Black History Month celebration based on 28 speakers in 28 days, which is as it sounds, where we bring in 28 members of the local community to meet with our students to share their journey, to empower them, and just honor the achievements of so many great historical figures, but also of the great men and women in our community that are making a difference every day. While working on that community-based partnership, our kids were able to communicate and connect with our community leaders and pick their brains and learn about their journey and see how they got to that foundation where they are today, which is really done a lot to strengthen and enrich the relationship we have. We're also able to during a very uncertain time, establish new opportunities for our kids in different ways that they can connect outside of the school day, through our partnership with the Central Food Bank of New York State. We launched a program where we were able to donate 2,147 pounds of food. We also launched a Read to Them program, putting books in the hands of every family, in the books of every child. And we were really fortunate in that sense, to be able to connect.
That's great. And I want to thank every one of you, and hopefully we'll see each other at the National Charter School Conference, and we will be there on Tuesday. I think that's going to be great. And thank you for everybody's wonderful work. And one last thing I wanted to add to Dom's piece is also having the students participate in those regional and national level competitions in science fair was another amazing part that we want to bring next year as well, because we want to make sure we build on the self-efficacy as well as on the self-esteem on our children, especially. It's really important after the COVID, when the COVID hit us socially, emotionally, and across the board. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and if in case needed, we are willing to share any and everything to any of our colleagues across the board. Doesn't matter, charter school, public school, homeschool, but we are all here for the children. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
All right, great, thank you. And that's a great way to close out. I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. As always, we will post today's recording in the Resource Center on our website. Please reach out to us if you have any questions about the topics discussed today, particularly the open meetings law, and check out the resources. The link is in the chat. We'll be taking a short break on the monthly sessions over the summer. I hope everyone has an enjoyable summer, is ready for us when we come back again in August. So be on the lookout for those communications. In the meantime, we wish you all a joyous and fulfilling end of your school year and a very happy, healthy, and very safe summer. Finally, I have to say, right, our monthly member webinars are made possible through the contribution and commitment of our member schools. We appreciate the ability to host these forums for the full New York Charter School community. If you are not a member of the association, we want you. We encourage you to join today by emailing membership@nycharters.net. And thank you everyone for a very good year. It's a tough and trying year. We hope we have been there for you to serve you. We are not done. This is just the last webinar until August. So keep calling, keep writing, keep looking out for our emails. And thank you very much for participating in the charter community and all the work you do. We're happy to support you. Have a great summer, everyone.